Hi guys.
Up. How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
We
Hey
just-
guys,
Hey everybody.
how are you guys?
Corral the
Hey,
gang.
Landon.
Hey. Let me just get my camera going.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Jackie. How you doing?
Good.
Hey,
How are you
Jackie.
guys?
Good.
Hey Jackie, how are you?
Really well. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Oh, hey.
Mika, how you doing?
Oh,
Hey, y'all.
I'm loading up on coffee right now. It's nice and early.
Cheers.
You should be.
What time is it there?
5:50.
Oh, God. I'm
Jeez.
so
Really
sorry.
Landon.
Yeah, solid.
No, it's all right.
Usually
right.
it's me doing those silly, strange phone calls at those hours and waking
Yeah.
my family up. And
Yeah.
I'm on
No,
the
it's
other
all
side
right.
of it for once.
Yeah.
the most-
I mean, at least I kick my day off nice and early.
Yeah. This is the most exciting thing I've done in Melbourne since they locked it down. So.
Oh, David, you should have just let us know, mate. We could do Zooms anytime you want.
Yeah. So thanks for hanging out, guys. It's real cool.
yeah. How are David? How are you going? I mean, how
Oh,
is it down there?
Yeah, I mean, for some people, it's really, really tough. Like, I'm pretty lucky. There's like 4 people in my house, and we live near a forest. We're kind of
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've got a few friends who are like by themselves, and they can't visit anyone, and that would be tough for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually love COVID because I don't have to travel, but I can imagine it's
I know there's no difference because I work from home, as you can see, in my basement anyway. So it just doesn't make any
Same.
It's
Same.
all the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. How are you, Mika?
Good. I actually just came from a shoot. So I did a commercial thing, and it's really funny with the whole new normal thing because you have like the assistant director is going to like shout when the talent is like removing their mask. So there's like an alarm that goes up and everybody kind of like takes a step back. It's like, whoa, okay, wow. Yeah. But
Whoa,
we all
whoa,
had
whoa.
we all had to get swabbed like early in the morning, and nobody could go in until you got swabbed, and of course tested negative, the negative that we like.
When
And I was
can-
like, well, did you have a backup for if somebody tests positive? So is it kind of just like cross your fingers and hope nobody does?
Yeah, rope off the set and don't let anyone out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would knock everyone out, wouldn't it? If one person had it, you'd all have to go home.
Yep.
Is that how that works?
Yeah. So
I'm loving your hair, by the way.
thank you. It's a pity that it's kind of fading right now, but it was really a nice, bright, fiery red like a couple of weeks ago.
It's beautiful. I saw the photos on Facebook.
I know. It's kind of fading right now, but I'm enjoying the hair journey as well. It's kind of got this, nice copper color.
Yeah, Judy.
Excellent.
Must be nice.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, I'm sure.
How are we
So,
going, Kathy?
gentlemen, I just want to make sure that I'm getting everybody's names correct. So we have Dr. Craig Duncan. How would you like me to address you? Dr. Craig
Yeah. Oh, Craig, it's okay.
or Craig? You don't want a bit of like Doctor Who kind of vibe, Dr. Craig.
Yeah.
No, like my kids always say to me, Dad, you're not a real doctor. You can't operate. So.
Oh my
Wow.
God.
Keep it humble.
They've said,
Keep it humble.
they've said that since they were very young. So I don't
That's
mind.
brutal.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's brutal. Okay.
Yeah. No, Dr. Craig is okay. Yeah.
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, Craig.
And we have David O'Reilly, right? I'll just call you David.
Yep, totally fine.
And of course, Landon Gorbenko. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right.
Did you guys have any questions for anything at all?
I just want to check, is it Mika?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Mika.
Just in reverse. There we go. So,
Kind of like I call myself. It's like Mikachu, so it's like
Mikachu.
Pikachu. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if
Yeah.
that just makes sense or I just made it more difficult. But
That
yeah.
is the best.
Yes. Cassie, you're laughing at me.
I'm trying to get a word in. When can we see this commercial? Why have you hidden it from
What is it
us?
for?
It's probably okay. I've actually done a lot and I actually haven't shared it just because I get into some really weird things. One commercial had sheep in it for some reason. Um, yeah, it gets really weird and campy in the whole TV commercial life. So it's like,
Oh.
if you
We're
find me,
gonna-
I'll say hey. But if you don't, I'm not gonna show you.
We're going to need proof. I'm afraid we're going to need proof here. Okay, I'm going to need you to send some of those videos in here. We're going to have
Yeah.
to view them, okay, in its entirety, thoroughly, and I'm going to
Oh,
share it on all our
no,
socials.
That's too bad. I don't have the videos.
Oh yeah, right.
What are you selling?
Sheep,
I'm selling sheep.
clearly.
Yeah, they're all farm commercials. All of them.
It's bizarre, but it's like a bunch of like local brands here in the Philippines, and
Yeah,
it's
wow.
kind of like it's good money and it's a no-brainer thing. So it's just like be campy and weird. Like okay, sure.
Just be campy and weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think Cassie's gonna hound me now on those.
I am
And
actually
not
gonna
leave me
hound
alone.
Would Marcus have access to these ads?
Oh gosh.
Yes.
I'll send
We
him a
found our way
message.
You
in.
might.
I'll send him a message.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to start in 2 minutes. So I'll stay in the chat, but obviously I'll be on mute. And I'll let Mika take over. She likes to call herself Pikachu.
Pikachu. Mika.
And Jackie will be monitoring. Jackie and I will be monitoring the chat. We'll take some questions at the end, and anyone's free to answer, obviously. And yeah, let's have fun. Be fun. Nice Friday night.
Got it.
Cool.
This is how we party.
This is how we
Friday
party.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Guys, well, I will leave the chat now, and I'll feed the questions through to Mika and have loads of fun. See you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to push us live now.
Perfect.
All right. Count us out, Cass. All right, gentlemen, just waiting for the go signal from our guardian angel in this chat, Cass. Awesome. Okay, we are live. Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to another GGWP Academy AMA session where we get you up close and personal with the movers and shakers in the gaming and streaming world. My name is Mika. I'm an esports correspondent and streamer from the sunny Isles of the Philippines, and I will be your host this evening. So thank you all for tuning in. And if you guys don't already know, I'm sure you guys do, but GGWP Academy is an education platform that guides gamers on creating long-standing careers in gaming. All our content is created from experts in the industry, and our knowledge has been pulled from some of the most successful content creators, providing not only education but opportunities with brands as well. Now, this seems a bit obvious. It was obvious to me, and I was actually surprised to know that this little fact is, taken for granted a lot of times. A long-standing career in gaming and esports means taking good care of your health. Seems like a no-brainer, right? Well, tonight we're going to be talking about our health as gamers, and I'm so glad to be joined by quite the panel to talk about this. We have over here, first up, Dr. Craig Duncan, one of the world's leading humans performance strategists, who has worked with sporting teams, individuals, and business organizations to maximize their potential. Dr. Craig, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mika, for having me, and hi, everyone.
And speaking of everybody else, we also have David O'Reilly, who is an engaging and animated educator with a master's in human nutrition. Thanks so much, David, for being here tonight.
It's a pleasure, as always. Always happy to be here.
And last but definitely not least, we have psychologist Landon Gorbenko, who has been working as a mental conditioning and performance coach in esports to help gamers achieve their goals while doing so in a healthy way. Landon, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come on. I'm excited to chat.
So, guys, this is quite a panel we have over here. So, if you have any questions at all, please drop them in the comments. Let us know, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of the show. So, gentlemen, like I mentioned, this seems like a very obvious thing to do if you're creating a career in anything, actually. But, you know, as you look around with like streamers streaming left and right every single day, they're streaming, and you have esports athletes with this immense amount of pressure on their shoulders and everything, we find that it actually takes a bit of a backseat. I've actually have not heard of anybody that, you know, really talks about health and gaming and health in gaming too. So I'm really excited to get this discussion, you know, going. So I want to start this off by asking each and every one of you, you know, you guys come from a traditional sports or science background. What were your initial thoughts and reactions to applying your studies into esports and gaming? It's a very, very new industry. So I'm sure you guys, you know, have had some new findings and everything in this kind of application. Let's start with Dr. Craig.
Oh, look, thanks, Mika. And I'm absolutely fascinated by esports. Look, I was a kid that played Atari, so I remember it quite well. And then, you know, with a son that games all the time, and I watched that, and just the rise of it. I see it as actually the most powerful rising sport that I'm actually involved in. And, you know, I've been in the big traditional sports and worked internationally, and I still enjoy that. But it has really resonated with me that what we do with athletes, like mainstream athletes, what people think are the athletes, is so powerful for esport athletes. Particularly in respect to looking after your health, not only from a physical fitness point of view, and I know Landon will speak about the psychology and Dave will speak about the nutrition, but just fundamentally, you know, to maximize your potential, it's imperative that when you perform, you're in your optimal zone of performance. So that's about being physiologically, psychologically ready. And so I think it's very, very important. And just fundamentally, I think if we start off with the foundation of performance, it's sleep. And I know a lot of gamers probably compromise sleep, as a lot of adults do. So we've found just by working on that specific area, I can see that, Mika, that you might compromise sleep, but just by doing that and managing that, you will game better. So if you're really serious about this, and I'm sure if you're watching this, you are, it's imperative that we start to look at this process. And one of the big areas that I work in is monitoring athletes, you know, on a daily basis to identify, you know, where are they in respect to their optimal performance zone. And there's so much technology out now that we can do this very well. And about teaching you, or, you know, teaching you as a gamer to really become a self-scientist, so you can identify when you are in or outside your zone, and then adjust accordingly to get in that zone. And so, yeah, I'm so interested in this area, and I'm always very happy for anyone to contact me, because I think this is only going to grow. And if anything COVID's been good for, I think it's been good for esports, because, you know, in respect to mainstream sports, without crowds, without funding, this is a massive area to grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's been a sort of like a surplus of streamers as well, and all eyes have suddenly turned into esports when, you know, physical sports were actually compromised. So I think it's interesting also that you use the word fundamental, because it really is. In anything, you think that, you know, of course, if you want to perform in anything, you take care of your health, and that has not become, you know, such an important world, especially, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic going around. So it's funny to me that, you know, this topic, this kind of discussion is so rare. Why have people not been talking about this? It's really funny. David, I would love to get your thoughts on this as well. Please let me know on how you managed to apply your knowledge in your field and relate it to gaming and esports.
Yeah, well, my background's actually sort of quite broad in a clinical science sense. Like, I came out of clinical trials working with universities for on drugs and pharmaceuticals. And currently I work in a supplement company dealing with probiotics at a lot called LifeSpace. So my background covers a lot of that, but what I've always been very passionate about through all of that is just that we have all this fantastic science. And I'm sure, Landon and Dr. Craig are reading the same sort of papers that I am, the scientific literature, but it's essentially completely useless if we can't distill that down so that the everyday person can understand what's going on there. And for a long time, we've been very good at doing that in medicine, been really good at doing that in traditional sports. That's getting a lot of, there's a lot of evidence there now. We're distilling that down so athletes can really understand it. But you can see over the last 2 years, esports, gaming, it was sort of put to the side, like they're not really doing anything except sitting on the couch. Now we've finally realized there's a lot going on, but nobody's started to distill that information down to them properly. And I actually think, I agree, COVID has actually been really good, not just for the fact that it's kind of pushed esports to the surface, but it's also highlighted this whole health domain because more and more people are streaming and gaming at the moment than ever before. So probably my biggest passion is not just the science, but making sure that everybody can understand that, not just the esport athlete, but even, the mum who games on a mobile phone at home. Like she needs to be able to understand this sort of health that we're talking about. That's what really drives me and drove me into this field. I mean, apart from the fact that I'm a semi-average Fortnite player, but
I feel like you have to maybe give yourself a little more credit. I mean, come on. This is coming from somebody who just ranked iron on Valorant. So
okay,
I'm not.
There we go.
Yeah. Landon, I would love to get your thoughts on this too. I mean, I see a lot of streamers, posting occasionally, hey, I'm going to take a break. I feel like I need to rest and everything. And I feel like, this has this surplus in streaming and gaming has had an effect psychologically on everybody. And, we're glued to our screens. We're like this now with this whole work from home setup. I would love to get your thoughts on this from the psychology perspective.
Yeah, so for me, the reason why I got into esports or gaming in general in the first place is because I've always been a gamer since pretty much the day I was born. I could play Mario before I could walk, more or less. It was just like it's so fundamental to who I am as a person. But going through my life, I kind of took it down the dark road where I got morbidly obese. I was super depressive. I didn't have any social skills. I was terrified of meeting new people. I couldn't talk to people, and it was a bad cycle. And I think it all kind of stemmed from my unhealthy behaviors or habits within gaming. So then I went to school. I got my degree in psychology, and I got my master's in performance psychology. So I'm not really like a counseling psychologist in that sense, but more of like using school tools from psychology to teach people. And during my master's program, I really just like hammered in on esports, and I sat down with my professor, and he's a traditional sports person, and I am coming from this world of esports. I was a little bit nervous kind of introducing him to the topic because, there's like a stigma with esports and gaming. I didn't know how he was going to react. And to my surprise, he loved it. He was all into it. He really supported my journey on that. So I was pumping out research papers on case studies on like Bjergsen, for example, who was a 17-year-old moving from Denmark to LA to play video games. Like how does parents let that happen and whatever. And so I was like writing a case study on like that transition, the process, how he's now one of the biggest names in esports in North America and all sorts of things like that. So I really tailored my master's program to focus specifically on esports and did my dissertation project on mental fatigue in esports compared to traditional sports in different domains. And that's kind of how I got into esports. I really wanted to look at something that I grew up in and how I can make an impact on that. And so when you see streamers saying things like they need to take a break or they're getting flamed or chats being toxic to them or Twitter's hating on them or gamers are burnt out because they've been practicing 16 hours a day for the past 3 months and they need a break. You're seeing people like Uzi retiring at 23 or whatever it was because of bad choices. Like that's what really gets me going, trying to figure out how we can prevent that, create long and healthy careers. Because truthfully, you shouldn't see 22, 23-year-olds retiring. There's something wrong at that point. And that's what I'm aiming at fixing.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, you brought up a really interesting thing about, retiring at 22 or 23. I mean, that's the age where, in other careers, you're still figuring things out. You're going up there, and in esports and gaming, you see this burnout. We're gonna get to that in a bit because that's a whole other question and a whole other topic that I want to get into. But for Dr. Craig, I actually have an interesting little anecdote for you that's related to our next question. So there's this esports team here in the Philippines, and I was doing an interview with them before one of their big matches. So I asked them what they did to prepare for this match and everything, and I was interviewing their coach. Interestingly enough, he said, "Oh, we went jogging this morning." I was like, "Oh, that that's cool. Why did you guys go jogging?" I mean, like, oh, that's interesting that you guys decided to keep physically fit and to prepare for your game. And he said, well, your brain, your fingers, what you use for gaming, that's still part of your body. And if your body itself is not healthy and in tip-top condition, then those things follow as well. You're not going to be able to perform as best as you can. And so what he did was he took his team away from all of this, gameplay, strategic planning and everything. And he said, guys, go jogging, go swimming together, and then we come back and we go head straight into the playoffs. So I thought it was so interesting, and I want to get your thoughts about this because I want to know, like, from you, what's the value of keeping physically fit in gaming and esports, and what what are the consequences for not doing so, like in terms of injuries and what happens to the body if you don't.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, that is really interesting that they were doing that. I mean, let's strip it right back. Why do any of us be physically active? I mean, the research is enormous. I think there is not a person alive that doesn't know, if you want to live longer and live better, you exercise. Sadly, probably only 20% of the population exercise on a regular basis. So, internationally, we had more people that smoke cigarettes and than exercise. So we've got a problem with it, that people know it's good for us, but they don't really do it. And I actually think that's part of probably the people that are prescribing the exercise are maybe part of the problem, because they don't empathize enough that not everyone enjoys it. I find it interesting. I mean, look, my background is sports science, but I think I'm a human performance. I mean, I don't think it's just related to sport, but esports is so interesting for me. Like in traditional sports, we have what's called training load. All right, so we monitor someone's training load, how much they train. To all it's about is preparing them for the game day. In everything that we do, it's exactly the same in esports. Okay, so what we need to do, would I jog my athletes on the day of an event? Well, we have to quantify exactly how much they're jogging because we don't want them to jog too much so they're actually fatigued or get injured doing that. I see the importance of that, and if I was working with an esports team, absolutely they'd be physically active and at their peak physical condition. Why? Well, number one, it's great for their health. So what, we're all about promoting good health. But more importantly, for the people listening, it is 100% going to make you perform better. And how is it going to do that? Because your mind is sharper, you're more ready to play when you have to play. You're going to sleep better. More than likely, if you're exercising, you're going to make better nutritional choices. And from a Landon perspective in psychology, psychology is going to be better. It's much better for your brain and how you act. So there is no doubt from that perspective, it's very, very important. But then we've got all the other issues, posture and how we actually perform when we're training. And a lot of those issues need to be spoken through. What stretches can we do to manage that situation? So the better we are as an athlete, okay, and I talk about esport, they're athletes, all right. The physically better they are, but it's absolutely specific for the event. So what are we trying to do? Yeah, we're trying to actually be in a really well-rounded physical condition so we can do what the game is about. And for me, the priority is monitoring this situation and having a really structured plan. What are the events coming up? This is what our training looks like. It's not like, okay, we just go for a run, or whatever. No, everything is structured leading into the performance. The question I always ask people, I mean, how much do you want this? If you really want it and you want to work with people like us, I'm going to be there 100%, because I will guarantee you, anyone that's listening today, if you are physically better, you're eating better, and you're following some sound psychological routines, you will perform better as a gamer, and ultimately you will make more money.
I mean, it's not hard, I think, to see that anybody who I think has, tried to do a decent game on any competitive game
Mm,
on like 3 hours of sleep knows the repercussions of this. I mean,
mm,
you don't even need to be a competitive gamer to feel that, and just imagine what the load on these competitive players is. It's tenfold. It's there's just so much pressure on them. And Landon, you brought up, such interesting topics a while ago. You talked about toxicity and all of these other things, which, by the way, will probably be another AMA session because that is a whole other monster to deal with. But of course, part of what Landon over here, has that is part of his field. So, Landon, I'd like to get your thoughts on, some techniques that you'd recommend to esports athletes to manage the pressure in competing and just all of this that goes on in the world of esports and gaming.
Yeah. So actually the question you just asked, Craig, is a perfect example of something that I would do with players before competitions or whatever. But like Craig said, I wouldn't take them out running prior to a match just because that's probably not something they're used to or something they're conditioned for. But it does help them in terms of like the psychological performance and their mental performance. And I kind of break it down for players as to why it's important. And then I'll tell you kind of what I'll do. But when you're going into performance, when you're going on stage, you're competing for a big prize pool, or even if it's like a small local tournament, there's still a lot of nerves that kind of kick up, right? That computer that you're about to sit at is no different from a lion chasing you. You're going to shut down. You're going to have a bunch of cortisol and adrenaline kind of rushing through your system, and that's going to make it very difficult for your brain to function properly. It's going to kind of be in that fight or flight, and we need to find a way to counter that. And to counter that, the answer is not sitting down and playing video games. You're just kind of like a hormone soup at that point, and your brain shutting down. And so I'll take like the pregame meetings, or when we're planning our strategy, I don't have my athletes sitting in a circle. We're usually walking and talking, just to add like a very light component of physical exercise. That way we're kind of putting those hormones to use a little bit. We're kind of getting the metabolisms kicked up a little bit, even though it's very minor. It is helping the brain kind of relax, come back down to a point of performance, and so that way we can focus in game. So that's one of the things. That's like a preparation technique. And then in terms of like, I always run it by a 3 kind of concept where it's prevention, mid-game, and post-game. And pre-game, what we'll do is we'll kind of go through pre-performance routines, and that way we're conditioning our brains and priming to know what's coming next, like what's next in my life. All right, so I go into the pre-performance routine that triggers me to get into my performance zone, and now I'm ready to go. Your brain's ready to function. You've done everything you need to. And I can break down pre-performance routines if you like. It might get a little bit of a long description, so I'll just leave it there for now. But then in game, I have a few tools that I use to just help players mentally reset, refocus. One being something that I call the light switch. And the light switch, to just kind of like describe it succinctly so that people that are listening can maybe put into practice for themselves right now, is when you're mid-game, everybody knows about that like resetting trigger word where you say, okay, focus, 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 or whatever kind of trigger word you have to try and reset your mental. One of the things that I've added that I found a little bit more practical or a little bit more useful is throwing in a physical component to that trigger word. So I have my athletes pick their trigger word. Maybe it's like refocus or next play or whatever it might be. Like they have the trigger word, and then as they're thinking it or saying it, I have them literally take their hand and flip a light switch. And then I find that by adding that physical component, it makes that thought a little bit more tangible and hard to ignore, right? Like you have a thought, thoughts are pretty fleeting. They can disappear. You can think focus, 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 or ready up, or whatever you want to use. But that thought can kind of disappear really quick, and you can fall back into the cycle of being kind of like performing bad or angry, frustrated really easily. So adding that little light switch helps to kind of keep people focused and reset them a little bit better. And then the final component of those, that like 3 block of prevention, mid-game, and post-game, the final one is the recovery or the post-game. And in there, we just kind of have a debriefing session with athletes. And you can do this by yourself if you're just doing solo queue. But after a game, after a series of games, or after a tournament or a competition or a scrim or a practice block, what you can do is you can sit back, reflect on what just happened. How did you feel that game? What kind of events were triggering those feelings? How well did you perform? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? Really just creating awareness for yourself of what you just went through, what you just did, how you did it, and everything kind of like regarding that performance. You use that information to build yourself awareness of all the things mental, like your feelings, your emotions, your triggers, your performance, your outcomes, all those things. And it just helps you then plan for the future using that awareness by having a debriefing session. So yeah, those are like the primary three things that I kick off: prevention, mid-game, and post-game debriefing.
I love how even that is gamified in itself. It's kind of like an early, mid, and late game, sort of like,
Yeah.
psychological check. I love it.
Yeah, well,
David, I do have a question for you as well. Oh, sorry, Len, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add one more quick thing. The reason why I broke it into three is when I first came into the industry, I was really focused on that preparation and prevention side of things. And I forgot, well, I didn't forget, I just wasn't considering the mid-game and post-game stuff as much. And it was going fine, right? Like my athletes were doing well, they were prepared, they were preventing all these breakdowns. But then inevitably, we're all humans and we're going to have a breakdown regardless of how well prepared we are. It's just, that's human nature, right? We all have those moments of failure. And I did not give my athletes the tools to handle those moments. So I realized that I needed to add those components in so that, yeah, we want to prevent everything, but at the same time, we also have to give you tools to handle it when it still does happen occasionally. So that's why I broke into three, so that we have the prevention, but we can also fix it if things do go wrong.
Absolutely. And I think like the context of, an athlete's sort of like state of mind pre-game is so different from when it's mid-game and from when it's post-game. And those are like entirely different sort of settings. So I like that you sort of like customize it to those, to that state of mind. I love it. David, I do have a question for you.
Sorry, Mick, I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say, Landon, I love the whole flicking the light switch thing on.
I know.
I'm a massive trigger word guy. Like I say, move fast, breathe slow a lot to myself when I'm exercising. Just putting that into an action. Like I could just say, your brain could tie those two things together so much better.
Yeah. Comes really a little bit more tangible kind of
really
thing.
Cool. Yeah. I'm going to use that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good.
Me too.
I like it. There we go.
I feel like I'm going to flick on my light switch right now every time I need to reset myself. But David, I do have a question for you guys as well. Well, apparently not me. I haven't read this article, but probably Cassie or Jackie has. They cited an article.
I've read an article. So.
You've read it. There is something from the Esports Observer that highlights nutrition as one of the still lacking health aspects of the industry. I'm going to sink a little lower in my seat over here because I do like munching on my junk food while I'm gaming. But can you talk to us about why this unhealthy snacking might be, and what kind of food should I actually be eating tonight as I do my competitive games?
You're actually in luck, because I'm not the guy that will walk in here and try and sell you my 152-day keto vegan plan by any means. I'm certainly not that guy. So but basically, I actually think I actually read through that article where they were talking about that. I think generally, though, there's a much broader problem, probably in let's go sports, let's go community in general. I actually reckon, alluding back to something Dr. Craig was saying before, most people know what is healthy and what is good for them. People are kind of making behavioral decisions to not do that. I think a lot of it's actually about behavior change. Like if I said to you, do you know which is the healthier choice out of this bag of chips and this apple? Like most people are going to be like, well, clearly it's the apple, but which one do you want to eat? Well, I'm going to eat the chips. So a lot of what I kind of work through and talk about is that people need to be doing small behavioral changes. Instead of going up to someone and saying, hey, get rid of all your snacks. You go, okay, today I normally eat 3 bags of chips while I'm gaming for 8 hours. I'm going to replace one of those bags of chips with nuts today. And I'm just going to do that for a week. So it's not like pulling the whole thing out of your diet. It's just trying to induce this small behavioral change. And let's say you do one more the week after and one more the week after. By the end of the year, you've done 52 little things that could actually lead you towards a healthier diet, because people don't want to change the whole behavior overnight. That's when people start to get very resistant. But the one thing they really touch on that article, which I think is really important for esports, gaming, streamers, is energy drink consumption. And so what they touch on there is that people are having energy drinks because they want the caffeine, totally natural. I drink a lot of coffee, love it. But they're also using it now also as a form of hydration. So people are drinking excess energy drinks, because they think the caffeine is going to boost them up the whole time, if they're playing for a long time. But it's also because they're thirsty, because they're probably eating salty chips. But the problem there is that caffeine actually has a point where it starts to plateau and it really doesn't have the same effect for you anymore. So you take the example of, say, riders in the Tour de France. I mean, they're riding for 2-3 weeks straight, 200 Ks a day. They're not sipping caffeine the whole time. And if it was going to provide them an advantage mentally and physically, they would drink caffeine all day if that's what was going to happen. what they actually do is they space it out, stagger it out through the day really carefully, so they get it when they need it, most from it. So a good example I use with someone who's consuming a lot of energy drinks is, okay, say you have 5 energy drinks in a day because you're thirsty. Let's get 3 of those out. We'll space them in times that you're generally fatigued. Maybe it's the morning, maybe it's the afternoon. And the rest of the time you put a bottle of water on your table. And when you're not having an energy drink, you're sipping that bottle of water the whole day. And hopefully you can get down, 2 or 3 good bottles of water in between, instead of using energy drinks for the hydration source. So not only there have you improved your performance by staggering your caffeine to the points where you need it and your brain will respond to it better, you're now putting drinking water into your diet and starting to encourage that good, healthy behavioral change through there. Because the other big problem with something like an energy drink, you're consuming heaps of calories, regardless of whether it's sugar or whatever's in there, just all the calories and additives that are in there for someone who's sitting all day. Because there's a lot going on in esports, a lot going on with streamers, they're busy, but it is quite a sedentary activity. People are generally sitting, so they're actually not burning those calories off. But that also alludes into the second part of what the other 2 guys are saying about going for a run or doing exercise, because that sport is that way and you are potentially eating a lot of snacks where you're sitting. Incorporating exercise is great for, trying to keep body weight down and just trying to keep lean muscle and just keep fit and healthy. The other thing I think is that we're really seeing coming through at the moment, which some people will be pretty resistant to this, but I actually think it's not a bad thing, is because I work in the supplement industry, I can see this coming through. There's a lot of meal replacements coming through now for gaming. And there'll be a lot of questions raised about whether this is a good thing or not. And I'm not necessarily saying a meal replacement replaces a balanced diet, but we've already established that, clearly most people aren't going to choose to just have a fully healthy lifestyle overnight. But what's something good about something like a meal replacement is, say, you're just eating junk all day. Having something like a meal replacement, there's generally regulations in place that they have to be created around a certain level of protein, calories, vitamins, minerals. So at least if you're having something like that, if you just want to sit at your desk all day and you just want to consume your calories there and that's what you choose to do, that's actually not a bad alternative for someone who wants to do that, because at least you're getting this sort of balanced, rounded number of nutrients if you're buying it off like a reputable place. I think one of the greatest quotes I actually heard about this coming through is guy Clinton Sparks, who used to work for FaZe Clan. He was actually saying that if you look at the next generation of kids coming through, the only thing they care about is social media, music, fashion, and gaming. They're actually not interested in hearing about your health kicks or your whatnot. They just want those things to function. So rather than getting people to necessarily rearrange the whole diet, I think we need to look at ways to just modify behaviors and incorporate healthy things into people's lifestyles.
Love how you talk about it as building a habit. So, I think, like, for example, if you take away my junk food tonight, I'm probably going to fight your ass,
Yeah.
so you got to do it, gently and, oh yeah, sure. Give her a few chips and stuff, sneak in a few candies or whatever. And then, suddenly like double it. It's kind of like, it's almost like, feeding your dog or altering your dog's diet or something. You got to treat yourself as that as well, if you really, really do want to build a habit.
And I was going to say, I reckon like a good goal long term for most people is you work towards, they often talk about like an 80-20 rule, 80% good, 20% not so great. It's not a bad balance overall for the everyday person. I mean, my diet's not perfect by any means, and I know all this. So I think setting yourself a long-term goal and just not trying to get it overnight is a really important way to approach it.
Right. And, like you mentioned, it's not going to happen overnight. So, I do agree with you, and I don't believe in these diets that were suddenly, no, just chuck everything out the window. And then, no, you just can't have that. It's part of you. Buy your book. Although I am going to quote you on that next time somebody tries to take away my junk food, though. But David said.
He said I can eat junk.
But I love how you brought up the whole energy drink thing, because I do see a lot of it. And, a lot of the sponsorship deals around esports and gaming are, you have these carbonated drinks and you have energy drinks and whatnot, because it's all about, this power and everything. And yeah, I actually want to get your thoughts on this, all 3 of you actually, about, the influence of advertising in esports and gaming in all your respective fields. I mean, like, for example, for Landon, I know psychology wise, it's like you have to treat it like you have the best job in the world, but you're just gaming. So why are you tired? You have, it's that whole thing. Let's start first with David, since he brought up the energy drinks already.
Yeah, I mean, advertising is only going to increase in gaming. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you look at the charts of Twitch viewership over the last 12 months, like it's gone up exponentially. So naturally, people are going to want to jump on board and advertise. There could be quite a bit of a problem at the moment, though, of convincing health food companies or, healthy supplement companies or whatever in that domain that this is a good place to invest money. So at the moment, we've got a few of these players who have always been around gaming, energy drinks and those sorts of things. They're pushed really hard in there. So that's the thing we're seeing all the time at the moment. So I guess for me, I would put a call out that, we need to be getting this message out, ourselves to these bigger companies that have these healthy options to convince them why esports and gaming is such an important market and why those products also need to be in there. Because, I mean, the advertising is not going to go away. We really just need to get a balance of what's going on.
Right. And I don't think it would be smart also career-wise for you to just suddenly say, oh, no, I don't do that. Because, I mean, their opportunities still do lie within those certain brands.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dr. Craig, I also want to get your opinion on this as well, because like the influence of advertising, you sometimes see, I think advertising is like intense on the physical side of this. Like, you have gamers who might not exactly portray the healthiest images, I guess, in terms of advertising. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think long term, the healthier the gamer is, and the better they probably look physically, I think it's going to be more valuable for them. Whether that's right or wrong. So that's important. I also think, I'm an ambassador for a supplement company, and not competing with you, David, but and the thing is, as someone that consumed previously an enormous amount of caffeine, and even energy drinks a number of years ago, I found, and David would say more about this, the caffeine spike from those was very difficult, and I don't think worked as well. Where there are some supplements that I've been involved in more recent times that have nootropic sort of qualities as well, and a very smooth caffeine rise, which is far superior for gaming. So in respect to gaming, if cortisol's high because of issues there, and it's a very fine motor skill, I think you've got to be very understanding of what caffeine does. So for example, in sports that we work in, the high contact sports, if I work in that, the caffeine intake in those sports is extremely high, and to a point where it's too high, because it does, as David said, gets to a point where it has no point. But if you compare that to football or soccer, where it's lower because it's more a skill, and it's a different game. Gaming is along those lines. A lot of caffeine is not going to be positive in respect to that jittery aspect with your hands. So I think that there are supplements that we can start introducing into the gaming world that are going to have a significant positive effect on performance. Now, I'm one also that understands the business of sport. So if we look at sponsorship, it pays the bills and all that sort of thing. So I think we have to be totally respectful of that, but it doesn't mean you as an athlete behind the scenes need to be that, if that makes sense. So like if you look at mainstream sports, Powerade, Gatorade, have had enormous influence, and none of us here could sit here and say, well, they're a positive thing for our health if you're not doing an extensive amount of exercise. So yeah, it's a bit of a Mika. It's we've got the business of sport, but you've got your personal thing, and ultimately the better you perform, the better you're going to be. So yeah, I think there's methods around that, and living a healthy life. It's going to make you a better gamer, even though we said the pillars of what young people want to do. But if you want to be a social media influencer by being a great gamer, and I tell you, or any of us tell you, this is what you do, I'm sure people will adapt to that. If we just say, okay, because you're going to live longer, no one cares about that when you're 20 years of age or 19 years of age, because we all think we're going to live forever anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. You still think you're invincible. Then you're gonna be like, I'm gonna stream forever, and then I don't know, 6 months down the line.
Trust me, it's I think it's the fundamental problem with the human race, where we're mortal and we think we're immortal. And that's why we carry on like we do, and don't embrace every day, because we don't think, tomorrow could be the end. And I think that's an important point. As soon as you realize that tomorrow could be the end, then you start living life a lot better. That's a bit off track, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of like my heart was soaring there already.
Sorry.
Well, Landon, we touched a little upon this a while ago, and I want to know your thoughts in terms of like advertising and the psychology that goes into this long career. I mean, on my end, what I'm seeing is a lot of people tend to think that because you're a player, because you're a streamer, you have the best job in the world. So you get a lot of people who tend to overcommit, I think, to their work because it's supposed to be quote unquote fun, but there is a lot of work involved in it, and that results like burnout and, as you mentioned a while ago, toxicity that somebody might not be prepared for because they were jumping into it thinking it was going to be their dream job. Let's talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to like streaming and gaming, right, every kid wants to do that. That's kind of the ultimate goal. Like you said, it's like the thing to do because it's easy, it's fun, and it's just the best job in the entire world. But eventually that novelty does kind of wear off, right? And then you're now on this constant grind every day to make sure that you put up quality content. And then the community, unfortunately, kind of expects, sometimes, not always, but sometimes expects like better and better and better and better and better content. And so you're constantly straining yourself to do that better content. And I don't think streamers really, or not streamers, but like gamer streamers, pretty much anybody, they haven't figured out how to structure schedule quite yet. So once that novelty wears out and they're out of that honeymoon phase with their new career of making big dollars, streaming Fortnite or whatever it is, it then becomes a job, right? Like you have to wake up, you have to follow your routine, you have to put on your schedule that everybody's expecting, you have to put on your happy customer service voice because you're streaming to a large crowd, and that's exhausting for the brain. Like you need to have those rests, but it's not really something that's encouraged or talked about because the community wants your content. They want it right now. Or in the esports side of things, people want your performance, and if you don't perform, then you get flamed online for being washed up in garbage. So then that kind of like triggers a cycle where you're now feeling washed up in garbage. So you have to go and train harder. And then that cycle of like feeling washed up, training harder continues to burn you up further and further and further. And so that's, again, part of a lot of the work that I'm doing is trying to teach people structure and figuring out how to kind of take those breaks. I call them deliberate breaks. There's the concept in like sports psychology of deliberate practice, and that's being very mindful about your practice or whatever you're working in. And I've taken that concept and created something called deliberate breaks, where you plan your breaks and you plan your rest periods every day, every week. Because if you don't plan them, sometimes you just continue to work, you continue to stream, you continue to play, you are taking a break from your competitive Fortnite, so then you go into League of Legends. Well, you're not really taking a break then. So let's be deliberate about your breaks and how you're going to go about doing that. So that's one of the big things that I teach people on how to avoid that burnout and really just like losing that passion for your career. But also another thing that I teach people is building in new hobbies as well outside of your career. So within like competitive esports or streaming, people tend to think that a break means going to a different game or playing a different game casually. And that just continues that cycle because you're not actually taking a break. You might feel like you are, but your brain is still running on overdrive and burning out, right? I can't count the amount of times where people will message me. They'll be like, hey, I'm taking a break. Was it okay if I play Valorant now instead? And that way I'm not like actually competing. I'm like, you're missing the point here. So I teach them to do other hobbies because that way, like if their stream, maybe they had a bad stream or their stream cycle, or they're getting a lot of toxicity in chat lately, or they have a bad performance at a tournament, that makes you feel bad, right? But if you have another hobby, it's like an emotional buffer for your psychology that you can fall back on this, right? Like my competitive career right now this week, it's not going so well. So I'm going to go and bake a few cakes, or I'm going to go hiking, or I'm going to go camping. And that additional hobby gives you a buffer, gives you a break, gives you relaxation. It allows for a little bit of recovery, and then you can come back swinging rather than falling into that cycle of, okay, I did bad, so now I have to go harder. And then I did bad, so now I have to go even harder. Now I went bad, so now I have to go even harder. It allows you to recover and come back.
I reckon I was just going to, sorry, Mika. I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say, Landon, something that's coming up in a lot of the topics is just that with traditional sports, we've learnt that things you do away from the sport can really feed into how productive that sport is when you're on the field. And I think esports and gaming is still catching up to that. They still think that grinding 16 hours a day at a computer is the trick to being a great athlete. And as you've alluded to, both of you, is that there's things you do away from the keyboard that will actually make you better at the keyboard. I think that's a topic that's really going to take a long time to get through in this kind of domain.
Yeah.
David. Yeah, sorry, Landon. David, that's a great point, because really, if we look at performance, the equation of performance, it's your capacity that you build, such as Landon was saying, by being and practicing the game, minus what I term the noise or the fatigue. And so you can't do it all the time. It's not like continue to train. It's the basic management of training load. And in this respect, really identifying this is training, this is recovery. And I don't think recovery is talked very much at all in esports. And, recovery is what maximizes your performance.
Yeah. And I was going to add that if I could have my way and I could just have every team listen to me immediately, one of the things I'd be having a lot of players and teams doing is going camping. That's actually, I think that's one of the biggest ways to kind of recover from performance and get like a refresh from esports and streaming. And the reason why I think that camping is one of my biggest hobbies, by the way, just that's why so I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this for sure. But I truly believe that going outdoors, going hiking, going camping helps with your mental resiliency in game, which is kind of crazy because camping has nothing to do with esports and gaming. But the things you learn about yourself, the challenges, like the unseen challenges that you have to figure out while you're outdoors and you're kind of in a tent or you're trying to cook over a tiny fire, whatever it is, those skills do translate into esports. And when you hit a barrier, you hit a wall, or you're starting to get fatigued in game, those skills that you learned while you're hiking and all the challenges you face and all the resiliency you built up there is going to come in game, and you're going to last a little bit longer than the person you're going against.
Yeah. It's
That is so interesting, and I just want to add that I'm a huge day hiker as well. There's several mountains here near the city where I live, and it was always nice to like at least once a month just venture out there, do a day hike, and come back. And it just did wonders for the mind. I also want to share a little anecdote because this is a personal thing for me. I won't name him, but there is a professional Tekken player that's very close to my heart. He's family. And it was the night before a big match. I see you out there. I'm talking about you. And I was like, I saw him online on a Discord, and I was like, what you doing awake? It's 3 a.m. You have a match tomorrow. And he's like, oh, I'm playing League. I'm like, why are you playing League? You gotta sleep, yo. You gotta get some rest. It's almost 4 a.m. And he's like, oh, I'm just relaxing. So I'm gonna clip. Yeah, I'm gonna clip that little bit of what you just said, and I'm gonna send it to him before his next match.
Doesn't count as a break.
Does not count. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah, I'm clipping that bit. But Landon, I do have a follow-up question for you because apart from that, reset that you think that gamers should do, I think one external force also that's sort of like a hazard of the job, I guess, is all of this toxicity that comes from being online. And although it's not related to esports and gaming, in esports and gaming you are putting yourself out there, and there is all this talk about social media pressure, cyberbullying, and everything. And I think, like, for example, as a streamer, there's a lot of energy that goes out and not a lot of it comes back through a screen. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure that comes from that, external pressure from fans, and all this energy that's being thrown at the screen. Can you let me know how you would coach somebody through that? Like what are your tips to help balance that out and get your head in the proper space to deal with all of that?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that a lot of players or streamers or social media influencers have to realize is that the people that are engaging with you don't always see you as a person. You are someone at the other end of the computer. They don't know you personally. They don't always fully grasp that you have feelings or you have experiences as well. And that kind of gives them free rein to just fire shots at you all day long. So it's not necessarily personal. Like it is personal in the sense they're attacking you, but some of them, the really toxic ones, have kind of dehumanized you in the sense that you're just numbers to them, right? You're just a social media thing. So their opinion of you doesn't always matter. And I think that's an important concept to remember. Yes, it's great to have feedback from other people, but when it's a stranger that's just flaming you for having a bad stream or a bad performance, their opinion of you doesn't really matter because they don't understand what's going on in your personal life. They don't understand why you had a bad performance. They don't understand why your stream was low energy. Maybe you're going through something in your real life. So they're like a person online, their opinion of you or their comments about you doesn't really matter. So you shouldn't, I know it's hard, it's easier said than done, but you shouldn't allow that to go into how you judge yourself because their perception of you isn't reality. So really just, that's one of the first concepts you have to understand. And again, that's easier said than done. It's not always just like, oh, okay, never mind, I don't care about that person. It is, people always take on the weight of what people say about them. But truthfully, the best thing you can do is just get off social media when things are going rough. I know that a lot of teams, if they have bad performances or if they, I think Cloud9 actually did this recently with their spring split. They had a social media detox where like everybody, they were playing poorly, nothing went right, so they got off social media. I think it was Cloud9. I can't remember. There was a team that recently did it. They did that because they knew that there was going to be a lot of hate coming towards them. And so if they were on social media, it was just going to kind of hurt them. So if you know that there's something happened that social media is going to attack you for, get off of it because it's only going to pull you down. There's nothing you can really do to prevent people from doing that. You can tell your community, you can tell your chat, you can tell your fans, like, don't flame me, or you can try and do that, but it's still going to happen. There's still going to be those people out there who don't really, like, they don't care. They're going to attack for no reason. And so you have to avoid it because you just can't stop it. And that's, unfortunately, that's the kind of, I see esports and gaming community as a whole kind of starting to step up and stand up for each other. I've been seeing it more and more communities, and they're being less derogatory or less offensive, which is great. But the best thing you can do for your mental health is that when people are attacking you, just get off social media.
Right. Which is actually what some of the comments say, don't they?
Yeah.
They're like, get off. Why are you here then?
Yeah. Sorry, Landon. We have the similar thing in mainstream sport, and fundamentally, you said it there, but philosophically in life, we can't control what other people say to us, or their actions. We can control how we perceive it, and we always say, well, most of the time you don't know these people, you don't like them, they're not important to you, so really, it doesn't mean anything, and it's much easier said than done. But fundamentally, that's what we've got to look at.
Your value as a person doesn't come from their opinion. It's kind of what I try and tell people. Again, always easier said than done, but who you are and the value that you bring to your community or to the world isn't dependent on how these few people see you.
That was literally the next thing I was about to say, is that a lot of the people were putting their identity in the fact that they're a streamer, or your identity is that you're a gamer or a traditional athlete or whatever it is. Yeah, the problem is you're also 100 other things that make you up as a person. That is not where your identity is. That's just part of what you do. So if your whole identity is attached to that, when someone attacks that, you feel very threatened and hurt by that. But if you know your identity is much bigger than just that one moment, then it makes it a lot easier to wipe those things off. But again, easier said than done. That'll be the running line for this conversation.
I know, and we've got a lot of questions actually coming in as we touch into this topic about burnout and how it affects the whole body. We're gonna get into your questions in just a few minutes, but I think we pretty much wrapped up all our questions. You guys just wrapped it up so succinctly about how to manage these, pretty much this digital age of stress that's coming in, all of these different factors that are coming in from this very, very new environment, which is, social media and this new landscape. So we have a question actually from Cenometric and Sir Harris 12, which I'm going to tie it all up because they kind of answer the same thing. So we have streamers that, want to be able to effectively deal with burnout or, poor posture and diet and all of these things. What advice would you give to streamers to help, strengthen the more positive habits to combat these things? I think, Dr. Craig, I think you can answer this well, the bit about posture and diet. When you mentioned posture a while ago, I kind of sat up straight. Push my shoulders back a bit.
Yeah, and me too. Look, I just sat up then. Look, I think in the whole aspect of human performance, we first have to identify and analyze where our present state is. And once we do the analysis of that, then we can start working on formulation of a plan, to start to make progress and forecast some outcomes from that. That's the model I work in, and then we implement it. But the first step is to analyze, where are we at? Okay, so posture is an issue for me, nutrition is an issue for me. I guarantee you, many people watching this, sleep will be an issue. I'm very much like David. I'm about, let's start really small. Let's start to make small steps forward. I don't care how long it takes us to go, let's just start moving in the right direction. And that first starts with analysis. So when I'm working with people, I say, I want to sit down first and then just see where we're at. And, it's a long game, but definitely let's start to think of our posture. Where are we sitting? Just check in after every game that you play, or, during your breaks, what's actually happening to your shoulders, and pulling them back, and then maybe doing some stretches if it start to get sore. I mean, most people would be struggling a little bit with sore, the neck, the lower back, those sort of things. But what we've got to do is just, adjust as we're going along. But first step, let's analyze where we're at. Where's our present state? Where's our desired state? Now we've got a gap. Now we formulate a plan, forecast an outcome, implement it. But the secret is to monitor, each day, where are we at? And then just sort of start to move forward. Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time, small steps. And I think we're all on the same page. As soon as, too many people in our business, in the whole human performance business, they're this way, it has to be this way, where it's not. It's you as an individual, like Mika, you better than anyone knows you. So that's it. So what we've got to do is, you might like this lifestyle. You might like, I can only sleep 5 hours a day, Craig. Okay. Well, then maybe in the afternoon we can have a nap. We can extend that sleep. There's always hacks, or, that we can work on for you as an individual.
And I would just like to reiterate the measuring and analysis thing. It really is the first step, because you often hear scientists say, if it isn't measured, it doesn't matter. It's kind of a throwaway line there. But you look at something like nutrition, like a lot of people, you would say, hey, how many snacks are you eating a day? And they go, I don't know, maybe 2, maybe 3. And on average, most people actually don't know. And they will generally deviate to say less than what is probably actually happening. But you take someone like a bodybuilder, they would weigh their food every single meal because they want to track that. You could make a small change by going, okay, today I'm actually going to mark down a bit of paper every time that I eat a snack. And often you'll pick up that bit of paper after doing that really little bit of analysis, just put a line on a bit of paper, go, oh, geez, hold on, that's more than I thought. And all of a sudden it becomes real to you, and you want a behavioral change on the back of that.
Right. So I think, we're all on the same page in that, baby steps are the best. You can't do a total 180 and expect a, sustainable outcome out of it in terms of your lifestyle and everything. So it's best to just, treat yourself a little bit. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow you skip it. Maybe next day it comes back or something.
Mm-hmm.
Landon, I also have a question for you. Somebody is asking, Xenometric is actually asking, what are the best stream habits to build in order to prevent, all of this, what we were talking about earlier about, toxicity and everything, to prevent that from getting into you. Let's say you're streaming and you have, a couple of particularly nasty messages just, going at you and everything. What should you do? Where should you be as you're doing that, trying to give a good performance?
Yeah, I think so. This is something that you can put in place, and just have your moderators in chat to catch those things so that you don't have to see them. That's probably the best thing to do right up on the front side of things, because once those messages hit you, it's hard to kind of pivot in the middle of a stream if somebody's being toxic to you. So finding ways to prevent that from happening just in the first place, whether it's banning people, whether it's getting your moderators in place. But really, the thing is, just don't even address it. If somebody's being toxic to you, don't try and, I know this is kind of bad advice sort of, but in the streaming community, when you start trying to tell people to stop doing that, it kind of gets them going even more. They love getting that reaction from you. So just pretend like they don't even exist. Just get rid of them, throw them away. They're unimportant. They don't matter to your stream. Give them the old ban or the kick from the chat so that they can't do that anymore. And then I think a big thing is creating an expectation with your own community. And this is a little bit of a longer term goal. It's not something that's on the fly, but it's something long term. Creating that healthy ecosystem within your own community, because I know that some streamers, they kind of build that toxic community by the way that they act online. Like they're toxic to other people. When they're playing games, they're flaming other people in game. They've kind of created this expectation that this community has some toxicity in it, but there's other people who they take the other side where their community is all about respect and being friendly and helping each other. And those kind of communities, although there's still going to be some toxicity that seeps into it, the expectation in those communities is that this is a no toxic ground, and other members kind of hold each other to it. And it's like a group collective kind of accountability thing in that sense. So again, that one's more of like a long-term thing because you have to build out that expectation, that community culture. But that's probably one of the best things is, one, don't pay attention to it. Get the bans going really quick because their opinions, if they're just being mindlessly toxic, their opinions don't really matter. So get rid of them out of the chat. And number 3, just build a community of accountability and respect.
I love what you mentioned about throwing that responsibility to the community, because then you're saying, hey, you guys are responsible for yourselves being good people, instead of inciting and flaming all of these very sort of like aggressive emotions and whatnot, which is let us count the ways in which that's happened in so many streams and whatnot. And I find it interesting. I think I was talking to Prolin about this during the last AMA session. When you're emotionally compromised as well, and psychologically compromised, you're probably going to say something that won't do very well for your career. I mean, you don't want to get caught up in the moment, suddenly say something that it's so easy to get people canceled these days. That one precious mistake could mean the end of your career. So I think it's really interesting that you brought that up.
Yeah, and that's why I say don't even engage with toxic people, because they're not there to be convinced. They're not there to have discourse or a conversation. They're there to flame you and be toxic. That's it. Mm-hmm. So if you engage in them, you're going to just start creating that cycle of toxicity. You're going to get in that conversation, and they are almost always going to drag you down to their level. That's just the way it tends to work. Like toxicity pulls you in, and it makes you more negative, and it pulls you into that state of mind as well, where you might end up saying something live that could impact your career. It doesn't matter for them. It's not going to impact their career. They're just some random person in a chat. So it's best to not even engage with them.
Right. Don't do it, guys. I know it's so tempting, but don't feed the trolls. Don't do it.
Yeah. A lot of those people too, they're actually looking, it's almost like a high for them when you respond. They'll say something, they want you to respond, they get their little high for the day. By not responding, you're actually not giving them that high. And a lot of those people, correct me if I'm wrong, Landon, at some point they'll probably just move on to the next streamer because they're not getting their high out of you that they were
and say the exact same thing.
Yeah. And that's why it's like creating that community or the community expectation or accountability that's not okay. Like they're going to come in, they're going to be toxic, they're going to get no response, and they're going to leave because that community didn't react to it. That community didn't engage it. They didn't promote it or do anything that it's just like a dead thing in that chat. So they go on to somebody else where they can get that high from.
Exactly. We do have one last question left, and I believe this one is for Dr. Craig. Xenometric is asking for something a little bit more specific, because he already has a proper gaming chair, but what specific stretches can he do to help? Because he suffers from chronic back pain, which is really a problem, especially these days with this whole work from home setup.
Oh, I actually filmed some before, so I think that was really important. I don't know if I can share my screen. Can I share my screen at all? Or I don't know if that's possible streaming, but...
Shall we ask? Cassie, are you out there? Can you share the screen?
No, because I've got some... But look, I don't know if it's a bit difficult for me to present, here, but I think maybe we can put these online later, because I've got a couple of stretches for them. But very, very simply, if I'm sitting here and I pull my shoulders back, just pulling my shoulders back, I mean, that's actually where my shoulders should be. And then so I'm sitting up in here. Now, if my lower back starts to get really, really sore, what I can do is lie front down. Just imagine on the floor or on a mat or something like that. I lay front down and then I just push myself up and stretch that out. So what you want to do is extend that, because we're in this situation all the time, gaming. Okay, we need to open up. All right. But I'm sure there'll be a place for us to post a couple of these videos I put together, so we can do that. So we can get that right, and they can contact me, and I can send them through.
Absolutely. Xenometric, don't worry. We're going to be dropping down that link in the chat. So we're going to get those stretches to you. And speaking of, you could also just contact Dr. Craig. I
Sure.
want you guys to promote, or if people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you? Let's start with Dr. Craig, since he already has a client in Xenometric.
Yeah. Look, the easiest way, is probably Instagram, or is just at Dr. Craig Duncan. And my website is just drcraigduncan.com.au. I will put it out there. If you really do contact me, I always reply, and I'm very happy to start some process of helping you out, because I'm fascinated by this area. There's a lot of stuff we haven't discussed, like the technology, the work we've done, in mainstream sport with the Apple Watch, and even this ring that I'm wearing now, the Aura ring, monitoring sleep, monitoring stress, looking at those sort of things. We've been able to work with some really great companies in doing this. That is absolutely, I think, a no-brainer for gamers. If you want to take it to that level, we can really work on that. So please contact me. I'm really, it's a big interest for me, something exciting, because I get a bit bored of mainstream sports. I've been doing it a long time,
It's old news. It's old news, and
Yeah.
I do think it's exciting, as of course, esports and gaming, and you giving this perspective into it. You are pioneering this. You are part of the batch of pioneers into this kind of
Actually,
application.
Mika,
All three of you are.
Mika, I'll tell you a funny story. A lot of my work, with international teams, like national teams in football, one of the biggest issues I had was their gaming. So there, we talked about them taking time off from football, and we spend a lot of time in hotels or around the world. And one of the biggest issues was their gaming, them playing FIFA, and then the amount of work that they would do. Even on the planes, they got addicted to the Nintendo thing, and it was like, guys, we need to sleep it. So I don't know if the people realize just. I started, the first time I ever saw Twitch was when I had these players and I was sitting, hang on, so you're watching someone play. So you've stopped playing now. So we've solved that problem. You're not playing anymore. Now you guys just sit around all night watching someone else play. And I'd never seen it before. So that was a few years ago. So that's how big gaming is. So gaming is, esports is huge in mainstream sports for people. So yeah.
I heard a story of one of the hockey teams in North America. I can't remember if it was like Vancouver Canucks or maybe it was the Washington Capitals, of how they actually banned Fortnite from their team on travel.
No.
So that the players couldn't play Fortnite while traveling or while competing.
We had huge issues, like fun sort of issues, but then, arguments over FIFA and all this sort of stuff. So it's a big part of everyone's life. So I'm so happy that people I really think it's the future,
Absolutely. It's
Totally.
here to stay. And guys, that was at Dr. Craig Duncan over there if you want to contact him. David, if people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
So for me, it's David W. O'Reilly without me apostrophe in my name, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. I think it's the same across the board. Instagram and LinkedIn are my best ones. Or you can look up Snappy Science on YouTube and you'll see my channel is on there, and you can contact me through there and learn about other random topics. So David W. O'Reilly across the board for me. And I'm the same as probably these guys. You write to me, I would 100% write back, guaranteed.
I am now curious about those random topics, but I will check out your YouTube channel instead and find out what those are.
I did a recent one on Lorna Jane, who put out clothes that they said would prevent coronavirus. So that's the kind of topics we're talking about.
Interesting. Just all across the board, this guy.
Yeah.
Landon, where do people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the standard social media. So Twitter, you can find me at Vertex Psych, or I'm sure you could find me just searching Landon Gorbenko, because that's my name on there. LinkedIn, also Landon Gorbenko. And then Instagram, also Landon.Gorbenko. So I mean, it's pretty much across the board, same thing. But any major social media platform, you can get in touch with me. And like what they mentioned, I respond to everybody. So feel free to give me a shout whenever.
There you go, guys. Just search the names.
Can I put
Go
a
ahead,
shout out?
David.
These guys, I don't know if I'm pointing, whether I'm in the middle on.
I know.
It's good. But they both have podcasts that I've listened to. So you guys should.
Yes.
Awesome.
I think
I
it's
forgot
Oh,
we
yeah.
I have a podcast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
you forgot.
Yeah, see,
definitely worth a listen.
thanks, David. I forgot about that because most of the time I'm just talking to myself. So I think,
Whoops.
yes, Mika, the Dr. Craig Duncan podcast. Yeah, my random thoughts most of the day after I run. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and my podcast, I work for a company called Power Up Academy, and we made a podcast called the No Tilt Mind, which is, you can find it on pretty much any podcast platform. But yes, the No Tilt Mind, and I'm a co-host there. My other co-host is a high performance coach that's been working with people in the elite levels of military and surgeons, and I'm coming from the esports side of things. We're just like throwing knowledge together and talking about how we can improve performance in esports and gaming. So yeah, search up No Tilt Mind.
Is that
Those
guy working?
both-
Is that guy? I was going to say, is that guy working with real doctors? Is he? Is that?
Yeah, real doctors, operating ones.
Dr. Craig, I'm so sorry.
No.
But guys, those both sound like amazing podcasts. I wonder why you guys didn't bring them up. But
It's early morning for me. I forget.
That's right. That's right. No, not yet in that. You're still way before pregame mindset over there.
Oh yeah, I'm still trying to figure out my caffeine situation for the day.
That's way in the early game. But guys, thank you so much for all of this. There was just amazing insight over here, and I feel like just so much to unpack. Maybe we need another session of this or something, because I have a lot more questions personally, definitely. But for now, that is all the time that we have. So thank you to Dr. Craig Duncan, to David O'Reilly, and to Landon Gorbenko for joining us for this AMA session of GGWP Academy. And thank you guys for tuning in as well and sending those lovely questions. I am Mika Fabs everywhere. Thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned, of course, to GGWP Academy for more insights from the best of the best in the gaming world. We'll see you soon.
All right. That was cool.
Thanks, Cass.
Good
You
work,
didn't
all.
answer me. I was calling like the voice of God over here, saying, "Hey, Cassie."
Oh yeah. Oh, I definitely heard you for sure. I just chose to ignore you until you cough up those commercials you've been hiding.
Typical. That's like a typical deity response, I say.
Until I see that, I'm just gonna keep ignoring. Not kidding. Thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you guys had fun.
Oh, yeah,
Fun.
definitely.
Thank you.
I
Thanks,
think
Mika.
I think
Thanks.
our
Thank
audience
you
had
so
fun as well.
much.
Thanks,
you.
Landon.
Thank you, everybody.
Good
It was
job.
good time.
Goodness, this was so insightful, and I probably shouldn't mention I had 3 hours of sleep, so I'm not at a peak performance right now.
I'm the same. When he's talking about sleep, I just panicked. So-
Yeah, same. Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
I'm not alone.
Speaking of the podcast, I'm going to invite you all. We have to do an interview. So yeah,
plan.
Yeah, definitely.
David, I'm in contact. Landon, Mika,
anytime.
you too.
Amazing.
Sweet.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah,
guys.
Thanks,
absolutely.
Jackie.
Thank you.
Have a great
See you.
night. Morning.
See you guys.